You are standing right now in the middle of what feels like an impossible situation. You've tried everything you know how to try. You've exhausted your resources, you've talked to everyone you could talk to, you've done all the right things, and still nothing has changed. And maybe right now, in this very moment, you're thinking there's no way out. You're thinking this is it. This is where your story ends. But I want to tell you something that's going to change everything for you today. There is a way out. There is always a way out. And it doesn't come from you figuring it all out with your limited human mind. It comes from something far greater than you. See, the problem isn't that you're in an impossible situation. The problem is that you're trying to solve it from the same level of consciousness that created it. You're using the same thinking, the same patterns, the same beliefs that got you here in the first place. And then you wonder why nothing changes. You keep pushing the same buttons, expecting different results. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. When you understand that there is an infinite intelligence, a divine power, a source energy, whatever you want to call it God, call it the universe, call it the Tao, it doesn't matter what label you put on it. When you understand that this power is always present, always available, always working on your behalf, then you begin to see that your impossible situation is only impossible from where you're standing right now. But from where God stands, from where this infinite intelligence operates, there are no impossible situations. There are only opportunities for miracles. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, well, that sounds nice, but you don't know my situation. You don't know what I'm going through. You don't know how bad it is. And you're right. I don't know your specific circumstances. But here's what I do know. I know that the same power that creates galaxies, the same force that makes your heart beat without you thinking about it, the same intelligence that grows an entire human being from 2 microscopic cells, that same power is available to you right now, in this moment, to create a way out of whatever situation you're facing. The question is not whether God has a way out for you. The question is whether you're willing to let go of your need to control everything and allow that divine intelligence to work through you. You see, most people want God to show up in their lives, but they want God to show up according to their plans, according to their timeline, according to their understanding of how things should work. And when it doesn't happen that way, they say, well, God isn't listening, God doesn't care, God has abandoned me. But that's not what's happening at all. What's happening is that you're so busy telling God how to fix your problem that you're not listening to what God is trying to tell you. You're so busy trying to force doors open that you're missing the window that's already open. You're so focused on the one way you think your situation can be resolved that you're blind to the 1,000 other ways that are available to you right now. Let me tell you something about impossible situations. Every single person who has ever achieved anything remarkable, who has ever overcome tremendous odds, who has ever experienced what others would call a miracle, they all have one thing in common. They all reached a point where they had to surrender, they had to let go. They had to stop trying to figure it all out. And they had to trust that there was a higher power, a greater intelligence working on their behalf. This doesn't mean you sit back and do nothing. This doesn't mean you become passive and just wait for things to magically change. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that you align yourself with this infinite intelligence. You become a vessel through which this divine power can work. You stop resisting and you start allowing. You stop forcing and you start flowing. Think about it this way. When you're in the ocean and a wave comes, if you resist it, if you fight against it, what happens? You get tumbled, you get thrown around, you might even drown. But if you align yourself with the wave, if you move with it, you can ride it all the way to shore. The same principle applies to your life. The same principle applies to your impossible situation. Right now, there's a wave of divine energy, a current of infinite intelligence that's trying to carry you to where you need to be. But you're fighting it. You're resisting it because it doesn't look like what you thought it should look like. It's not coming in the package you expected. It's not following the route you planned. So you're saying no to it. And in saying no to the help that's being offered, you're keeping yourself stuck in your impossible situation. I want you to consider something. What if the very thing you're resisting right now is exactly what you need? What if the door that closed, the job you lost, the relationship that ended, the business that failed, what if all of that wasn't happening to you but for you? What if it was the universe's way of redirecting you towards something better, something greater, something more aligned with your true purpose? You see, when you're attached to outcomes, when you're so fixated on how things have to be, You cut yourself off from the infinite possibilities that are available to you. You limit God's ability to work in your life because you're saying it has to be this way or no way. But God doesn't work in boxes. The universe doesn't operate according to your limited understanding. Divine intelligence has access to resources you can't even see, opportunities you can't even conceive of, solutions you haven't even thought of. Your job is not to figure out how it's all going to work out. Your job is to trust that it will work out. Your job is to maintain faith even when you can't see the path. Your job is to believe in the possibility of miracles even when everything around you is screaming that it's impossible. Now let's talk about faith for a moment. Real faith isn't hoping that things will work out. Real faith isn't crossing your fingers and wishing for the best. Real faith is knowing with absolute certainty that no matter what happens, you are being guided, you are being supported, you are being carried by a power that is far greater than any problem you could ever face. Faith is not the absence of fear. Faith is feeling the fear and trusting anyway. Faith is looking at your bank account with $3 in it and knowing that somehow, some way, your needs will be met. Faith is receiving the diagnosis and knowing that you are more than your body, you are more than your circumstances. You are a spiritual being having a temporary human experience. When you have this kind of faith, this unshakable trust in divine intelligence, something remarkable happens. You stop being so afraid. You stop being so anxious. You stop trying to control everything. And in that space of surrender, in that space of trust, that's where miracles happen. That's where solutions appear. That's where doors open that you didn't even know existed. I've seen this happen over and over again in my own life and in the lives of countless others. People who were facing bankruptcy and suddenly received an unexpected check in the mail. People who were given a terminal diagnosis and their bodies healed in ways that doctors couldn't explain. People who had been unemployed for months and suddenly got offered their dream job. People who had been alone for years and met the love of their life when they finally stopped desperately searching. These aren't coincidences. These aren't accidents. These are the natural result of aligning yourself with the flow of divine intelligence. These are what happen when you stop blocking the channel through which miracles can enter your life. But here's what you need to understand. You can't be in alignment with divine intelligence while you're holding on to resentment, anger, bitterness, or fear. You can't access the highest solutions while you're vibrating at the lowest frequencies. You can't receive miracles while you're focused on everything that's wrong. This is why your thoughts matter so much. This is why what you focus on matters so much. Because whatever you give your attention to, you give your energy to, and whatever you give your energy to expands in your life. If you're constantly thinking about how impossible your situation is, if you're constantly talking about how bad things are, if you're constantly focusing on the problem, then guess what? You're just creating more of the same. But when you shift your focus, when you start looking for evidence of divine support in your life, when you start noticing the small miracles that happen every day, when you start feeling grateful for what is working instead of complaining about what isn't, everything begins to change. Not because the external circumstances necessarily change right away, although they often do, but because you change. Your perception changes, your energy changes, and when your energy changes, you begin to attract different experiences. Let me be clear about something. I'm not talking about positive thinking as a way to deny reality. I'm not suggesting you put on rose-colored glasses and pretend everything is fine when it's not. What I'm talking about is choosing to see the bigger picture. What I'm talking about is understanding that your current circumstances are temporary, they're not permanent, they're not who you are, they're just what you're experiencing right now. And here's the beautiful thing, this moment right now, the one you're in, this is the only moment you have any power. You can't change the past. It's gone. You can't control the future. It hasn't happened yet. But right now, in this present moment, you have a choice. You can choose to align yourself with fear or faith. You can choose to focus on the problem or the solution. You can choose to feel like a victim or remember that you are a powerful creator. When you choose faith, when you choose to trust in divine intelligence, when you choose to believe that there is a way out even when you can't see it yet, you open yourself up to receive guidance. And this guidance comes in many forms. Sometimes it comes as an intuition, a gut feeling, a sense of what you need to do next. Sometimes it comes through other people, through a conversation, through a book, through something you hear on the radio. Sometimes it comes through what appears to be coincidence or synchronicity. But you have to be paying attention. You have to be present. You have to be open and receptive. If you're so caught up in your worry, so consumed by your anxiety, so lost in your fear, you're going to miss the signs. You're going to miss the guidance. You're going to miss the opportunities that are being presented to you. This is why meditation is so powerful. This is why taking time to be still and quiet, your mind is not a luxury, it's a necessity. Because in that silence, in that stillness, that's where you can hear the voice of divine intelligence. That's where you can receive the guidance you need. That's where you can tap into the wisdom that already exists within you. You see, the answers you're looking for, they're not out there somewhere. They're inside you. You already have access to infinite intelligence. You already have a direct connection to divine wisdom. The problem is that your mind is so noisy, so busy, so full of chatter that you can't hear it. It's like trying to hear a whisper in a room full of people shouting. You have to quiet the noise if you want to hear the message. And when you do, when you take the time to get still, when you create space for divine intelligence to communicate with you, you'll be amazed at what comes through. You'll receive ideas you never would have thought of. You'll get clarity about what steps to take next. You'll feel a sense of peace even in the middle of chaos. You'll know, without knowing how you know, that everything is going to be okay. This knowing, this inner certainty, this is your connection to God. This is your connection to Source. This is how you access the power that can move mountains, part seas, and make a way out of no way. But you have to nurture this connection. You have to cultivate it. You have to protect it from the negativity and fear that the world constantly throws at you. You have to be very careful about what you allow into your consciousness. You have to be selective about what you watch, what you read, who you spend time with, what conversations you participate in. Because all of this is either strengthening your connection to divine intelligence or weakening it. All of this is either raising your vibration or lowering it. All of this is either opening you up to miracles or closing you off to them. If you're surrounding yourself with people who constantly complain, who see problems everywhere, who don't believe in possibilities, that's going to affect you. If you're watching news that fills you with fear, reading articles that make you feel hopeless, listening to music that brings you down, that's going to affect you, not because you're weak, but because you're human, because you're influenced by the energy around you. So you have to be intentional. You have to protect your peace. You have to guard your mind. You have to choose every single day to align yourself with higher frequencies. This means spending time in nature. This means listening to uplifting music. This means reading books that inspire you. This means surrounding yourself with people who believe in you, who encourage you, who remind you of who you really are when you forget, and you will forget. We all do. We all have moments where we lose faith, where we doubt, where we fall back into fear. That's part of being human. The key is not to stay there. The key is to recognize what's happening and make a different choice. The key is to remember that you have the power in any moment to shift your focus, to change your thoughts, to realign yourself with divine intelligence. One of the most powerful ways to do this is through gratitude. When you feel grateful, when you genuinely appreciate what you have, you cannot simultaneously feel fear or worry or anxiety. Gratitude is a high vibration emotion. It immediately raises your frequency and opens you up to receive more good things. So even in the middle of your impossible situation, find something to be grateful for. Be grateful that you woke up this morning. Be grateful that you have breath in your lungs. Be grateful for the people who love you. Be grateful for past experiences where things worked out even when you thought they wouldn't. Be grateful in advance for the solution that's already on its way to you. This last one is particularly powerful. When you thank God for answering your prayer before you see the evidence of it, you're demonstrating absolute faith. You're saying, I trust so completely that you've got this handled that I'm already celebrating the outcome. And this level of faith moves heaven and earth. This level of trust activates forces you can't even comprehend. Now, I want to address something important. Sometimes the way out of your impossible situation doesn't look like you thought it would. Sometimes the solution requires you to change. Sometimes it requires you to grow. Sometimes it requires you to let go of old patterns, old beliefs, old ways of being that are no longer serving you. God will never give you a way out that keeps you small. God will never provide a solution that enables your dysfunction. Divine intelligence is always leading you toward your highest good, toward the fullest expression of who you really are. And sometimes that means you have to go through the fire. Sometimes that means you have to face your fears. Sometimes that means you have to surrender the very thing you've been clinging to. This is where most people get stuck. They ask for help, but they're not willing to do the inner work. They want the miracle, but they don't want to change. They want God to fix their situation, but they want to stay exactly the same. And that's not how it works. If you want different results, you have to become a different person. If you want a different life, you have to develop a different consciousness. If you want to move beyond your impossible situation, you have to be willing to release whatever is keeping you tied to it. Maybe it's your need to be right. Maybe it's your attachment to being the victim. Maybe it's your fear of success. Maybe it's your unwillingness to forgive. Maybe it's your belief that you're not worthy of good things. Whatever it is, you have to be willing to look at it honestly and let it go. This is not easy. This requires courage. This requires you to be brutally honest with yourself. But this is also where true transformation happens. This is where you stop being a person who has problems and become a person who has solutions. This is where you stop being someone things happen to and become someone who creates their reality. And when you make this shift, when you take full responsibility for your life, not in a way that blames you for everything, but in a way that empowers you to change everything, that's when you become unstoppable. That's when you realize that you're not a victim of circumstances, you're a creator of experiences. That's when you understand that your impossible situation was never really impossible. It was just an invitation to expand, to grow, to step into a bigger version of yourself. God doesn't create impossible situations. God creates opportunities for you to remember who you really are. You are not this small, limited, fearful person you sometimes think you are. You are a spiritual being with unlimited potential. You are connected to infinite intelligence. You have access to divine power. There is literally nothing you cannot be, do, or have when you align yourself with this truth. But you have to believe it. You have to know it. You have to live from this place of knowing. And the only way to do that is to practice. You have to practice faith. You have to practice trust. You have to practice surrender. You have to practice gratitude. You have to practice seeing yourself as the powerful creator you are instead of the helpless victim you think you are. Every time you choose faith over fear, you get stronger. Every time you choose to trust instead of worry, you build your faith muscles. Every time you choose to focus on solutions instead of problems, you train your mind to see possibilities. And over time, this becomes your new normal. This becomes who you are. You become someone who faces challenges with confidence because you know you're never alone. You become someone who looks at obstacles as opportunities because you know they're just stepping stones to something better. You become someone who remains calm in the storm because you know that this too shall pass, and there's a higher purpose being served, even if you can't see it yet. This is the life that's available to you. This is the person you can become. This is what happens when you truly understand that God has a way out of your impossible situation. Not because God is going to swoop down and fix everything for you, but because when you align yourself with divine intelligence, when you open yourself to infinite possibilities, when you trust in the power that creates worlds, you become a channel through which miracles can flow. And here's what's really beautiful. When you learn to do this for yourself, when you learn to navigate your own impossible situations with faith and trust, you become a light for others. You become an example of what's possible. You become proof that miracles are real, that divine intelligence is always working, that there is always a way out no matter how dark things seem. People will look at your life and wonder how you did it. They'll ask you what your secret is. And you'll tell them there's no secret. You'll tell them that you simply learn to get out of your own way. You learn to stop fighting against the current and start flowing with it. You learn to trust in something bigger than yourself. You learn to believe in the impossible. And when you do this, when you live from this place of faith and trust and connection to divine intelligence, you don't just change your own life. You change the lives of everyone around you. Your family sees it, your friends see it, strangers see it, and they're inspired. They're reminded of their own connection to Source. They're encouraged to have faith in their own impossible situations. This is how the world changes. Not through force, not through fighting, but through people like you who choose to align themselves with love instead of fear, with faith instead of doubt, with trust instead of control. Through people who understand that we're all connected, we're all expressions of the same divine intelligence, we're all capable of miracles. So right now, in this moment, I want you to make a decision. I want you to decide that no matter how impossible your situation seems, you're going to trust that there is a way out. You're going to trust that divine intelligence is already working on your behalf. You're going to trust that you are being guided, supported, and carried by a power that is far greater than any problem you could ever face. Decide that you're going to let go of your need to control how it all unfolds. Decide that you're going to release your attachment to specific outcomes. Decide that you're going to open yourself up to possibilities you haven't even considered yet. Decide that you're going to focus on faith instead of fear, on solutions instead of problems, on gratitude instead of complaints. Decide that you're going to take the next step in front of you, even if you can't see the entire staircase. Decide that you're going to trust your intuition, follow your guidance, act on your inspired ideas. Decide that you're going to be patient with the process, knowing that divine timing is perfect even when it doesn't match your timeline. Decide that you're going to be kind to yourself along the way, that you're going to forgive yourself when you stumble, that you're going to get back up when you fall, that you're going to keep going even when you feel like giving up. Because here's what I know for certain. If you're still breathing, if your heart is still beating, if you're still here, then your story isn't over. There are still chapters to be written. There are still miracles waiting to unfold. There is still a purpose for your life that hasn't been fulfilled yet. Your impossible situation is not the end. It's a beginning. It's a doorway. It's an invitation to step into a bigger version of yourself, to access deeper levels of faith, to experience the power of divine intelligence working through you. And when you look back on this time from the vantage point of your healed, transformed, miraculous life, you're going to see it differently. You're going to see that what felt like your darkest hour was actually your greatest teacher. You're going to see that what seemed like an impossible situation was actually a perfectly orchestrated opportunity for your growth. You're going to see that you were never alone, never abandoned, never forgotten. You were always held. You were always loved. You were always guided. And there was always a way out. There was always a solution. There was always hope. This is your truth. This is your power. This is your birthright. You are a beloved child of the universe. You are an expression of divine intelligence. You are worthy of miracles. You are capable of the impossible. So stand up, dust yourself off, lift your eyes, open your heart, trust the process. Have faith in the journey, believe in the power that creates worlds, and know that this same power is working for you, through you, as you. Your impossible situation doesn't stand a chance against the infinite intelligence of the universe. Your problem is no match for the divine power that flows through you. Your circumstances are about to shift because you are about to shift. You are about to remember who you really are. You are about to tap into resources you didn't know you had. You are about to witness miracles. God has a way out of your impossible situation. The way is opening right now. The solution is already in motion. The miracle is already on its way. All you have to do is trust. All you have to do is believe. All you have to do is align yourself with the infinite possibilities that are your true nature. You are not stuck. You are not trapped. You are not hopeless. You are powerful beyond measure. You are loved beyond comprehension. You are supported by forces you cannot see, but can absolutely feel when you get quiet enough to notice. So breathe, relax, release, trust. Know that everything is working out for your highest good. Know that you are exactly where you need to be, learning exactly what you need to learn, becoming exactly who you need to become. Your impossible situation is about to become your greatest testimony. Your struggle is about to become your strength. Your test is about to become your testimony. Your mess is about to become your message. This is not the end of your story. This is the beginning of your miracle. And it starts right now, with you choosing faith over fear, trust over control, love over everything else. God has a way out. The way is here. The way is now. The way is you. You know, right now, in this very moment, there's something weighing on your heart. There's something that's been keeping you up at night. There's a situation in your life that feels unbearable, and you've been carrying it around like a heavy stone, trying to figure it out, trying to control it, trying to make it turn out the way you think it should. And I want to tell you something that might just change everything for you today. It's time to put that burden down. It's time to leave it in God's hands. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, but I've tried everything. I've prayed, I've hoped, I've worked so hard, and nothing's changed. And that's exactly the point. You've been trying to do it all yourself. You've been holding on so tight to your problems, to your pain, to your circumstances, that you've forgotten something fundamental about how this universe works. You've forgotten that there's a power greater than you, a wisdom far beyond your limited perspective, and an intelligence that orchestrates everything in perfect timing. When you're in pain, when you're hurting, when you're going through something that feels like it's tearing you apart, it's the most natural thing in the world to try to fix it yourself. We're conditioned to believe that we have to control everything, that we have to have all the answers, that if we just work hard enough, or think hard enough, or worry hard enough, we can somehow force life to bend to our will. But let me tell you something that's going to set you free. You were never meant to carry these burdens alone. You were never designed to figure everything out by yourself. And the moment you truly understand this, the moment you really let it sink into your consciousness, everything shifts. God sees your pain. Every tear you've cried in the darkness, every moment you felt alone, every time your heart has broken into what feels like a million pieces, none of it has gone unnoticed. None of it has been ignored. The divine presence that created you, that breathed life into you, that knows every single hair on your head, sees everything you're going through. And not only does God see your pain, but God hears your cry. Every prayer, every desperate plea, every whispered help me in the middle of the night when you couldn't sleep, every single one has been heard. But here's where most people get stuck. They think that because they've prayed and things haven't changed yet, that God isn't listening. They think that because they're still in pain, still in the struggle, still in the darkness, that somehow they've been abandoned. And this couldn't be further from the truth. You see, God's timing is not your timing. God's ways are not your ways. And what you're perceiving as silence is actually the universe rearranging itself on your behalf. Think about it this way. When you plant a seed in the ground, you don't dig it up every single day to check if it's growing. You don't stand over it and worry and stress and try to force it to sprout faster. You plant it, you water it, you give it sunlight, and then you trust. You trust the process. You trust that beneath the surface, in the darkness of the soil, something miraculous is happening. The seed is breaking open, roots are forming, life is preparing to burst forth. But all of this happens in a time frame that the seed knows, not in the time frame you demand. Your life works the same way. The challenges you're facing right now, the pain you're experiencing, the situations that seem impossible, they're all seeds that have been planted. And yes, it's dark right now. Yes, it feels like nothing is happening. Yes, it seems like your prayers are falling on deaf ears. But I promise you, beneath the surface of what you can see, God is working. The universe is conspiring on your behalf. Things are shifting and changing and moving in ways that you cannot perceive with your limited human perspective. The problem is, we want instant results. We want our pain to disappear overnight. We want our problems solved immediately. We want what we want, and we want it now. And when it doesn't happen according to our schedule, we lose faith. We start to doubt. We begin to think that we're doing something wrong, or that we're not worthy, or that God has forgotten about us. But this is where we need to shift our understanding completely. Leaving it in God's hands doesn't mean sitting back and doing nothing. It doesn't mean being passive or giving up or resigning yourself to misery. What it means is doing what you can do, taking the actions that are yours to take, and then releasing your attachment to the outcome. It means understanding that you're not the one in control of how things unfold. You're not the director of this movie. You're not the author who gets to write every single plot twist. You're a participant in a much larger story, and there's a wisdom guiding that story that's far greater than anything you could comprehend. When you truly leave something in God's hands, you're acknowledging that you don't have all the answers. You're admitting that your perspective is limited. You're recognizing that what you think you want might not actually be what's best for you. And this takes tremendous courage. It takes tremendous faith, because it means letting go of control. And for most of us, that's the scariest thing in the world. But here's what happens when you really do this. When you really surrender your burdens, when you really trust that God has got this, when you really believe that the universe is working for you and not against you, a weight lifts. The anxiety that's been crushing your chest starts to ease. The fear that's been keeping you paralyzed begins to fade. And in its place comes a peace that surpasses all understanding. Not because your circumstances have changed yet, but because your relationship to those circumstances has transformed. You stop waking up every morning with that immediate rush of dread. You stop going to bed every night with your mind racing through all the worst-case scenarios. You stop carrying that tension in your shoulders, that knot in your stomach, that heaviness in your heart, because you finally understood that this isn't all on you. You finally realized that you don't have to have all the figured out. You finally accepted that it's okay to not be in control. And here's the beautiful paradox. The moment you stop trying to control everything, the moment you surrender to the flow of life, the moment you trust in something greater than yourself, that's when things actually start to shift. That's when solutions appear that you never could have thought of. That's when doors open that you didn't even know existed. That's when people show up in your life who bring exactly what you need. That's when circumstances align in ways that seem almost miraculous. But you have to understand something important. God's plan for you might not look like your plan for you. The way your life unfolds might not match the picture you had in your mind. And this is actually a blessing, even though it doesn't feel like it at the time. Because your limited perspective can only see what you think you want based on your past experiences, your conditioning, your fears, and your ego's desires. But God sees the bigger picture. God knows what you actually need to grow, to evolve, to become the person you're meant to be. Sometimes what looks like a rejection is actually protection. Sometimes what feels like a delay is actually divine timing. Sometimes what seems like a door closing is actually the universe redirecting you to something better. But you can't see this when you're in the middle of the pain. You can't understand it when you're in the thick of the struggle. You can only see it when you look back, when you're on the other side, when you realize that everything happened exactly as it needed to happen. I know you're hurting right now. I know you're tired. I know you've been strong for so long and you just want this to be over. I know you've been praying and hoping and doing everything you know how to do, and you're exhausted. And I want you to know that it's okay to be tired. It's okay to feel weak. It's okay to admit that you can't do this alone. Because that admission, that vulnerability, that honest acknowledgement of your limitations, that's not weakness. That's actually the beginning of true strength. True strength isn't about never breaking. It's not about always being in control. It's not about having all the answers or never showing your pain. True strength is about knowing when to hold on and when to let go. It's about doing your part and then trusting God to do the rest. It's about being willing to walk through the darkness with faith, even when you can't see where you're going. And faith, real faith, isn't about being certain of the outcome. It's not about knowing exactly how things are going to turn out. Real faith is about trusting the process even when you can't see the result. It's about believing that you're being guided even when the path is unclear. It's about knowing that you're being held even when you feel like you're falling. You see, God hears your cry not just as sound, but as the deepest longing of your soul. And the response isn't always what you expect. Sometimes the answer to your prayer isn't getting what you asked for. Sometimes the answer is getting what you need. Sometimes the answer is developing the strength to handle whatever comes. Sometimes the answer is learning to find peace regardless of your circumstances. Sometimes the answer is becoming a different person, someone who no longer needs the situation to change in order to be okay. This is the transformation that happens when you truly leave it in God's hands. You stop being controlled by your circumstances. You stop letting external conditions determine your internal state. You start to understand that peace isn't something you find when everything works out the way you want. Peace is something you cultivate from within, regardless of what's happening around you. And I want to be clear about something. Leaving it in God's hands doesn't mean you stop caring. It doesn't mean you become cold or detached or indifferent. It means you care deeply, you give it your all, you do everything that's genuinely yours to do, and then you release the outcome. You trust that whatever happens, even if it's not what you wanted, even if it's not what you expected, it's what's needed for your highest good and your greatest growth. Think about the times in your life when things didn't work out the way you planned. Think about the times when you were devastated because something you wanted so badly didn't happen, or something you loved so much was taken away. Now look at where you are today. Can you see how those moments, as painful as they were, led you to something better? Can you see how those closed doors eventually led you to open windows? Can you see how what felt like the worst thing that could happen actually became a turning point? This is the pattern of how life works when you're aligned with the divine flow. This is what happens when you trust in something greater than yourself. This is the evidence that God is always working on your behalf, even when it doesn't feel like it, even when you can't see it, even when you want to give up. Your pain is not permanent. Your struggle is not your identity. Your current circumstances are not your final destination. They're just a chapter in your story, and the author of your story is writing something far more beautiful than you could write for yourself. But you have to let the story unfold. You have to stop trying to skip ahead to the end. You have to stop trying to rewrite every scene that doesn't match your expectations. When you're going through difficult times, it's easy to forget who you really are. It's easy to get so consumed by the problem that you lose sight of your own divine nature. But you are not your problems. You are not your pain. You are not your circumstances. You are a spiritual being having a human experience, and that spiritual essence within you is connected to the same power that created galaxies and orchestrates the perfect harmony of nature. That means you have access to infinite wisdom. You have access to unlimited strength. You have access to a peace that exists beyond all understanding. But you can only access these things when you get out of your own way. You can only tap into this power when you stop trying to do everything yourself. You can only experience this peace when you surrender your need to control. And surrender is not defeat. Let me say that again because this is so important. Surrender is not giving up. Surrender is not admitting failure. Surrender is acknowledging that there's a greater intelligence at work and you're choosing to align with it rather than fight against it. Surrender is the ultimate act of faith. It's saying, I trust that I'm being taken care of even when I can't see how. I trust that everything is working out for my highest good, even when it doesn't look like it. I trust that God has got this even when I feel lost. This trust, this faith, this willingness to surrender, it changes everything. It changes your energy. It changes how you show up in the world. It changes what you attract into your life. Because when you're not desperately clinging and grasping and forcing and controlling, you create space for miracles to happen. You create an opening for grace to flow in. You become a vessel through which the divine can work. And God is always trying to work through you. God is always trying to guide you. God is always trying to show you the way. But if you're too busy running around in fear and panic and anxiety, if you're too caught up in your own limited thinking and your own desperate attempts to fix everything, you can't hear the guidance. You can't see the signs. You can't feel the nudges that are trying to point you in the right direction. Leaving it in God's hands creates the stillness necessary to receive divine guidance. It creates the calm necessary to hear the whispers of intuition. It creates the clarity necessary to see the path that's being illuminated for you. And when you start to see these things, when you start to notice the synchronicities and the small miracles and the perfect timing of events, your faith deepens. Your trust strengthens. Your peace expands. You start to realize that you're never alone. You start to understand that you're always supported. You start to recognize that even in your darkest moments, even when you felt abandoned, even when you thought no one could possibly understand what you were going through, God was there. God was holding you. God was carrying you through. And those prayers you thought weren't being answered, they were being answered all along, just not in the way you expected. Not in the timing you demanded, not in the form you thought you needed, but in the way that was actually best for you, in the timing that was actually perfect for your growth, in the form that was actually aligned with your highest good. Every single thing you've been through has been preparing you for something. Every challenge has been teaching you something. Every hardship has been strengthening you in some way. And I know it's hard to see this when you're in the middle of the storm. I know it's difficult to believe this when you're drowning in pain, but it's true nonetheless. Your struggles are not punishments. Your difficulties are not evidence that you've done something wrong or that you're not worthy or that God has turned away from you. They're invitations to grow. They're opportunities to develop faith. They're chances to discover strength you didn't know you had. They're doorways to a deeper understanding of yourself and your connection to the recite, divine. And when you can shift your perspective to see your challenges this way, when you can reframe your pain as a catalyst for transformation, when you can view your struggles as sacred assignments rather than cruel punishments, everything changes. The same circumstances that were making you bitter start making you better. The same situations that were filling you with resentment start filling you with resilience. The same experiences that were breaking you down start building you up. This is the alchemy that happens when you truly leave it in God's hands. This is the magic that occurs when you surrender your burdens and trust the process. You don't become someone who never has problems. You become someone who handles problems differently. You don't become someone who never feels pain. You become someone who moves through pain with more grace. You don't become someone who never struggles. You become someone who struggles with faith instead of fear. And faith isn't the absence of doubt. Faith isn't pretending everything is fine when it's not. Faith isn't forcing yourself to smile when you want to cry. Real faith is being honest about where you are while still trusting where you're going. Real faith is acknowledging the difficulty while still believing in the possibility. Real faith is feeling the pain while still holding on to hope. Hope is not naive optimism. Hope is not denying reality. Hope is a spiritual practice. It's a choice you make every single day to believe that things can get better, even when you have no evidence. It's a decision to keep going, even when you're exhausted. It's a commitment to trust, even when you're scared. And every time you choose hope over despair, every time you choose faith over fear, every time you choose to trust God instead of trying to control everything yourself, you're building your spiritual strength. You're deepening your connection to the divine. You're becoming more aligned with your true nature. And this alignment is what ultimately brings the peace you're seeking. Because peace was never meant to come from having a perfect life. Peace was never meant to come from having all your problems solved. Peace was never meant to come from getting everything you want exactly when you want it. Peace comes from knowing that no matter what happens, you're going to be okay. Peace comes from trusting that you're being guided. Peace comes from believing that God has got you, and God does have you. Right now, in this moment, regardless of what you're going through, regardless of how bad things look, regardless of how much pain you're in, God has you. You are held, you are loved, you are supported. You are not alone. You have never been alone. You will never be alone. The divine presence that breathed life into you at the beginning is with you now and will be with you always. This presence knows your name. This presence feels your pain. This presence hears your cry. And this presence is working on your behalf in ways you cannot see, in dimensions you cannot perceive, through means you cannot understand. Your job is not to figure it all out. Your job is not to make it all happen. Your job is not to force and push and control. Your job is to show up. Your job is to do the next right thing. Your job is to take one step at a time. And then your job is to trust, to have faith, to leave it in God's hands. When you do this, when you really do this, you'll start to notice things. You'll start to see how you're being guided. You'll start to recognize how doors are opening at exactly the right time. You'll start to realize how people are showing up with exactly what you need. You'll start to understand how everything is connected, how everything is orchestrated, how nothing is random. You'll look back at the times you thought you were lost, and you'll see that you were actually being redirected. You'll look back at the times you thought you were broken, and you'll see that you were actually being rebuilt into something stronger. You'll look back at the times you thought God wasn't listening, and you'll see that you were being heard all along. This is the perspective that comes with time and faith. This is the wisdom that comes from trusting the process. This is the peace that comes from leaving it in God's hands. And it's available to you right now, not someday when everything works out, not eventually when all your problems are solved. Right now, exactly as you are, exactly where you are. You don't have to wait until you're perfect to trust God. You don't have to wait until you have it all figured out to have faith. You don't have to wait until your life looks a certain way to surrender your burdens. You can do it now. You can do it right in the middle of your mess. You can do it while you're still hurting, while you're still struggling, while you're still scared. In fact, that's the best time to do it. When you're at the end of your rope, when you've tried everything else, when you have nowhere else to turn, that's when surrender becomes real. That's when faith becomes genuine. That's when trust becomes transformative. So if you're there right now, if you're at that place where you can't carry this anymore, if you're at that point where you need help, if you're at that moment where you're ready to let go, I want you to know that this is not a sign of weakness. This is a sign of wisdom. This is not giving up. This is waking up. This is not failure. This is faith. Take whatever burden you've been carrying and mentally place it in God's hands. See yourself physically taking this weight off your shoulders and giving it over to a power greater than yourself. Feel the relief that comes with releasing control. Feel the peace that flows in when you stop resisting. Feel the love that surrounds you when you remember you're not alone. And then, after you've surrendered it, after you've released it, after you've left it in God's hands, let it stay there. Don't pick it back up 5 minutes later. Don't take it back because you're nervous about how things will turn out. Don't grab onto it again because you think you know better. Let it go. Really let it go. Trust that it's being handled. Trust that it's being worked out. Trust that God's got this. This doesn't mean you'll never think about it again. It doesn't mean you'll never feel concerned. It doesn't mean you become completely detached. It means that when the worry comes back, when the fear creeps in, when the anxiety starts to rise, you notice it, you acknowledge it, and then you consciously choose to release it again. You say, no, I already gave this to God. I'm trusting the process. I'm having faith. And you do this as many times as necessary. This is the practice. This is the spiritual work. This is how you build your faith muscles and strengthen your trust and deepen your connection to the divine. Every time you catch yourself trying to take back control and you consciously choose to surrender again, you're growing. You're evolving. You're becoming more aligned with your true spiritual nature. This is not always easy. Some days it will feel natural and peaceful. Other days it will feel impossible and you'll struggle. And that's okay. That's part of being human. What matters is that you keep coming back to it. You keep choosing faith. You keep trusting. You keep leaving it in God's hands. And over time, something beautiful happens. The peace that felt temporary starts to feel more permanent. The trust that felt shaky starts to feel more solid. The faith that felt weak starts to feel stronger. And you realize that you're changing, not because your circumstances have necessarily changed, but because you have changed. Your relationship with life has changed. Your understanding of how the universe works has changed. Your connection to God has changed. You're no longer someone who falls apart at every obstacle. You're no longer someone who's controlled by fear. You're no longer someone who thinks they have to do everything alone. You've become someone who knows how to surrender. You've become someone who understands the power of faith. You've become someone who trusts that they're always being guided and supported by something greater than themselves. This transformation is what's waiting for you on the other side of surrender. This peace is what's available when you truly leave it in God's hands. This strength is what you discover when you stop trying to be strong all by yourself and instead allow yourself to be strengthened by divine power. So let go, release your grip, open your hands, stop fighting so hard, stop trying to control what you cannot control, stop carrying burdens you were never meant to carry alone, put them down, hand them over. Leave them in God's hands. Trust that you are seen, trust that you are heard, trust that you are loved, trust that you are guided, trust that everything is working out for your highest good, even if you can't see how yet. Trust that your prayers are being answered, even if not in the way you expected. Trust that your pain has purpose, even if you don't understand it yet. And most of all, trust that you are not alone. You have never been alone. In your darkest moments, in your deepest pain, in your greatest struggles, God has been there. God has seen every tear. God has heard every cry. God has felt every heartbreak. And God is working on your behalf right now, in this very moment, arranging circumstances, aligning opportunities, preparing blessings that you cannot yet imagine. Your job is simply to trust, to have faith, to keep going, to take one step at a time, and to leave the rest in God's hands. Do this, and you will find peace. Do this, and you will find strength. Do this, and you will find that you're capable of handling whatever life brings your way. Not because you're doing it alone, but because you finally understood that you never had to. You were always meant to walk this path hand in hand with the divine, supported by infinite love, guided by infinite wisdom, held by infinite grace. Leave it in God's hands and watch what happens. Watch how things shift. Watch how doors open. Watch how solutions appear. Watch how your burden lifts. Watch how your peace deepens. Watch how your faith grows. Watch how your life transforms. Not always in the ways you expect, but always in the ways you need. Always at the perfect time. Always for your highest good. Always with love. Always with purpose. Always with grace. This is the promise. This is the truth. This is the way. Leave it in God's hands. and trust that you are being taken care of. Because you are. Right now. Always. Forever.